morning. This is Harlan Sands, President of Cleveland State, and we're here today to talk to you about our special week for veterans. It's called Valuing Our Viking Vets Week, and part of that is going to be a series of ceremonies and conversations. We hope you enjoy it, and we urge you to take part in all the proceedings. Get on board as we build out our veterans programs here at Cleveland State, and we really look forward to engaging all of our vets, all 479 of them, and looking for future opportunities where we can bring more veterans to Cleveland State. So welcome to Cleveland State. I'm here today with Vice Admiral Forrest Faison, our former Surgeon General, and it's my privilege and pleasure that we have a chance to have this conversation about something that's near and dear to our heart, which is our veterans experience. And Forrest, why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of your background, because it certainly dwarfs my minimal 10 years plus on active duty in the Navy.
Oh, President Sands, thank you very much. It's a real privilege to be here at Cleveland State and to be helping to make a difference for an amazing institution. And I'm just so gratified that the 479 vets that are part of our family are here and are part of our future. They're just amazing. I spent 39 years in the military. Didn't plan to do that. I grew up in Rocky River. Actually had planned to be a minister, and went to a college with that intent in mind. And one thing led to another, and ultimately my career plans changed, and decided to become a doctor instead. And I couldn't afford to go to medical school, and I didn't know about scholarship programs, but I did know about the military's medical school in Maryland, and I applied and got in, and I chose the Navy, and ended up spending 39 years. And started off as a pediatrician, and then ultimately ended up as the Surgeon General for the Navy and the Marine Corps. And it was the honor of a lifetime. Got to meet some amazing men and women who are defending our country and making sure that we pass on to our children probably the greatest gift we'll ever leave them: freedom.
So you talk about your last tour of duty, which is exciting. And if I'm not mistaken, you worked with over 70,000 medical professionals that are serving on active duty. Is that right? I
did, yeah. The Navy Medicine takes care of all the Navy and the Marine Corps. So it's about 70,000 people that are scattered pretty much all over the world in every time zone. About 128 hospitals and medical centers, and we care for about 3 million people. And we also train a little over 1,200 physicians a year, and about 5,000 nurses and corpsmen and others that are part of the healthcare team every year. And I'll tell you, it was the privilege and honor of a lifetime to see them. Every one of them volunteered, and it was great to see it.
Isn't it interesting when you look back on your career, and you said that you never intended to have a 39-year career, but the way the military works, every tour of duty, you kind of evaluate where you are and you think about your next assignment, right? Yeah. Is that how it happened for you?
That's exactly right. Yeah, it just, I went to medical school. I was going to be a pediatrician. I was going to do my payback, get out, settle down, and one thing led to another. And every duty station presented new opportunities and new excitement. And we got to live all over the world. And ultimately, I met my wife at one of my duty stations. We got married, had kids. We moved quite frequently. We pretty much lived on every continent except South America and Antarctica. And it's just been a great tour. And I think it's really been good for the family as well.
So I think back to my first tour of duty. I got into the military a little differently than you. I was an ROTC student. I applied for a scholarship. I didn't know much about the military. I didn't come from a military family. Mm-hmm. And once I had the scholarship, then I kind of got indoctrinated. And after I graduated, I had my first tour of duty was on a helicopter carrier, USS Guam. Tell us about your first duty assignment after you finished medical school.
So my first duty assignment was on the USS Texas, which is a Virginia-class nuclear cruiser back when we had those. And I still keep in touch with them. Our wardroom's very close, right? And we still keep in touch all these years later. The Guam's a great ship. I mean, very different
mission. You spent some time on the Guam?
I did. I absolutely have been on the Guam. It's quite a different
Well, you
ship.
wouldn't want to go there now because I think it's a coral reef off the coast of Key Largo, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really? Oh, my God.
You can go down and see my stateroom, but you need some scuba gear because I think they sunk it after, I think, over 40 years of service.
Wow.
Commissioned in 1962, an old Essex-class World War II aircraft carrier frame where they built the LPHs on. So I spent almost 4 years on my first assignment there. How long were you on the Texas?
So I was on the Texas 2 years.
Yeah.
So
And then where'd you go?
Then I went back and completed my residency and was a pediatrician at a couple air stations, and then did a fellowship in neurodevelopmental pediatrics, so taking care of kids with developmental disabilities, and then kind of went from there.
Wow, fantastic. So tell me one story about your first tour of duty when you were, fresh out of medical school. Tell me one. Share with everyone one story, and then I'll go ahead and try to do the same from my time on the Guam.
Well, I think the story that really resonates with me the most that I talk about was actually happened in medical school. When you go to the military medical school, when you go to USUS, it's very much a military centered curriculum. So you take all the classes that you would take in normal medical school,
Right.
but you take additional classes in military medicine and combat operations and things like that. And I joined. One of the reasons I joined the Navy because I'm not real big on camping. So so I thought you'd never have to camp. But in your fourth year, they actually fly you down to San Antonio and take you out in the field where for 2 weeks you have to run a MASH unit, and you take different roles and things like that. And I was not looking forward to this because it's MREs and it's living in tents, and I was like not looking forward to this. And they take you down there and they just run you ragged for 24/7 for 2 weeks. And so by the end, you're just exhausted.
Right.
And the guy that ran this, I did not like. I did not like this guy. And he knew it, and I knew it too. And at the end there, we're just tired, we're exhausted, we're wet, we're cold. And he's standing up there, and we're doing the debrief of the final exercise. And he goes, "So why do you do this? You're tired, you're cold, you're wet." And I go, "That's a great question." And he goes, "You do it because the guy on the stretcher and his family back home are depending on you to do it." And I didn't think about that at the time. I said, "Great, where's the pizza?" And I forgot that lesson for probably 20 years. Fast forward 20, 21 years, and I was the brigade medical officer with the Marines on an exercise in a very remote part of Australia. And this one Marine came down with probably the worst pneumonia I have ever seen. Far too unstable to medically evacuate. So there was a little tiny sheep herding town about an hour outside the training area that had one ICU bed with one ventilator. And the doc who was there was a South African doc, and he and I spent 5 days, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, keeping this kid alive. And it was so bad that I thought he was going to die. And I called his parents to tell him that and said, "I'll try and keep him alive until you can get here, but no promises." And just sat down and just was just demoralized. And I remembered those words for whatever reason. I said, "Okay, we're going to do this." And by the time the parents got here, he had made a recovery and lived. And now he's a doctor.
That's fantastic.
That's my favorite story.
So thinking back to the training, it kind of all tied together for you.
It did.
Why they gave you the training.
It
Because
did.
it was going to pay off at some future point in your career, and it did for you.
It did.
I think back to my time on my first assignment, and I swear I had hair back then. And I have pictures to prove it. I did. I used to have more than me now, but I just remember how young I was and how every day was a lesson.
Yeah.
Everybody from the boatswain mates to the chiefs. I was a first division officer when I got to the ship, so all the ship's boats were under my unit. And I just remember going out in rough waters on a 40-foot boat and chipping paint with the men to get a sense of what it felt like. And when you are on a big platform like that, by the time you finish chipping the paint and repainting the ship, it's time to start again.
Yeah.
You start on one end, you go around, and by the time you're done, it takes about a year. You're ready to go ahead and repeat the cycle. And thinking about why that was important to them and why their job was just as important as the guys in the engine room or the folks on the bridge, just that whole cohesive unit on making sure the ship was able to finish its mission. And years later, I still think about those experiences, and some of those guys, we stay in touch too.
Yeah.
Some of the captains that I had on that ship were hugely influential people in my life. So you had the same kind of experience.
Absolutely. Isn't that the culture that you learned, engage leadership? So you were down there with your men watching and learning what they did so you could take care of them.
Absolutely, and there was tough love in there.
Yeah.
You know, lots of tough love. I was probably, the maturation process. The military does a really good job at getting you down the road on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, maybe more than it would have happened outside the military.
Absolutely.
I think it did a lot for me. But same experience for you?
Absolutely. I mean, you get a lot of responsibility very early on,
Right.
and but they also take care of you. You know, they also take care of you. It's an environment where they expect you to lead. They introduce you to leadership early, and then they give you progressively more responsibility. And I really found that to be a great culture.
Talk a little bit about, you got such a wide range of experiences over your career. Talk about another assignment that was just different and yet equally important in your professional development.
I think probably the time when I was most proud to be an American, and I think that this really had a profound impact on me because I understood and really recognized the importance of leadership, was when I was the commanding officer of a combat hospital in theater during OIF, and we had a combat hospital.
Explain the acronym.
Sure.
For our readers.
So a combat hospital is a hospital that takes care of combat casualties, and OIF is Operation Iraqi Freedom. So this is when we were in Iraq. And our hospital was getting a fair number of IED casualties, improvised explosive devices, with this. And the two stories that I remember most was our main hospital was in Kuwait, very northern part of Kuwait. And because the Iraqis had invaded Kuwait in the early 90s as part of Gulf War I, and they brutalized the Kuwaiti population, Kuwait had a law that you could if you were an Iraqi, you could never come into Kuwait. So one of our clinics was right up on the border because all the supplies for Baghdad came into Kuwait City, went up on the border, and then over at night went across the border and then went on up to Baghdad. Right across the border was this town called Safwan, which had more IED explosions than anywhere else in Iraq. And we would get all of those. And one day this little Iraqi boy was playing with his ball and stepped on an IED and blew his legs off. And this corpsman, these Navy corpsmen who just are so impressive, ran across the border, put tourniquets on this young man, and saved him. Brought him back into Kuwait, though. And within an hour, we were getting a call from the Kuwaiti government. What are you doing? You brought an Iraqi. I said, it's a 5-year-old boy. We're saving his life. Is there a problem? And there was a silence on the phone. And he goes, I'll get back to you. And he never did. And so for doing that, to reward that corpsman, I gave him a medal. And I learned the importance of recognizing and rewarding behavior, of doing the right thing when it's
at the time.
At the time.
When probably there was another, the guidance was certainly not what he did.
Exactly. So so you never really understand the impact you have as a leader, but everybody looks at what you do. And I learned that in the military.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think back to the eye opener for me was to see the workings of the Pentagon as a young lieutenant when I finished my sea tour and went up to D.C. as an intelligence officer and watching how folks that looked then like you and I look now, older gentlemen, captains, admirals, and generals. And I remember being in the Pentagon as a lieutenant, not fully appreciating the insight I had into the inner workings of the Department of Defense and the Department of the Navy and how decisions were made. And I got the experience of watching what happens at that level during a war, during Desert Storm, where I was able to be part of a mission planning group for pretty much the entire time there. And I look back on it and I think about the opportunities that young lieutenants and folks have. Now, granted, I did make my share of coffee for admirals back then. I was qualified on many different coffee machines back then, very early in the morning. But by the same token, every one of those officers, every single one would have a different way that they would say, hey, come on over here, let me show you how. I want this done, and this is why it's important. And those experiences are just a part of who we are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You work for some amazing leaders too.
Yeah. Oh, back then, some of these folks are still renowned. I worked for a captain named Art Sabrowski, who is basically the father of multidisciplinary warfare, C3 warfare, and ended up running the Navy postgraduate school and the Navy War College later in his career, and the list goes on and on for me.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were some for you too.
Absolutely, and isn't it great how these guys will take the time to mentor you? Because that's the other thing about the military, that they're mentoring the people that are going to take their place.
Yeah.
Because that's passed on from generation to
I
generation.
remember being on the bridge of the Guam,
Mm-hmm.
and Art Zabrowski was the captain of the ship at that point. He ultimately became, I think, a 2 or 3 star admiral. I think he might
3-star.
have known that. And I remember it was 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'm doing my job, and he wanted to have a talk about my career in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and I was 22 years old. That was about the last thing I wanted to talk about, but those are the kinds of conversations you remember.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the way the military is, and those are the lessons we take here to Cleveland State, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And-
Covenant leadership and taking care of your people and
Yeah.
grooming the next generation.
Tell folks about the story. I think it's kind of interesting about the first time we walked this campus together, right here near the Veterans Center where we are now. And do you remember my walk into the Trinity Cathedral?
I do. I absolutely do. So I was here. It was 2018, and we had Navy Week here in
That's right.
Cleveland, and
That's
I
right.
came up to visit because it's home. It's in my hometown, and had the opportunity to meet you and the amazing team here at Cleveland State, because we send our corpsmen up here to get trauma training at University Hospital and Cleveland Clinic, and we were looking at getting some of them to come to Cleveland State to finish out their degrees, and we had a great conversation, and then one thing led to another, and ultimately came here to be part of the team. And you were walking me around,
I was.
and we walked into Trinity Cathedral here on the campus.
And I remember saying to you, I know this isn't part of the university proper, but it's part of our campus and our culture. And the cathedral's amazing. I've been all over Europe. I've seen 13th, 14th century cathedrals, and this is really a special place. And you nodded and went, yeah. And then I walked you in, and what happened next?
So, and I'm looking around, and you thought I was going to be more impressed, and I said, yeah, I got confirmed here when I was a teenager. So, and I said, what was really amazing to me is to see Cleveland State today. Because in those days, this was not a good place, and Cleveland State was fairly young. Yeah. And now I look, and what an amazing university, and what a great team, and just how much this area has changed.
So when we think about the opportunities for veterans here at Cleveland State, and we talked about the 400 plus that we have, and of course we want it to be more. That's one of our goals. We have a great veterans center staff led by Josh, and working very hard to move it forward. What are the things that folks can expect to see from us when we talk about making our family bigger when it comes to getting more veterans here to Cleveland State?
Absolutely. I think Cleveland State offers an amazing opportunity for our veterans, and the veterans offer an amazing opportunity for Cleveland State. Less than 1% of our nation serves in uniform, and every one of them is a volunteer who joined to be something bigger, part of something bigger than themselves, which is what Cleveland State aspires to be, as the impact that it has on the region in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. Under your leadership, we're changing Cleveland State to position it to improve its contribution to the region, to improve the services we provide our students, to give them solid careers in the future, that they'll be contributing members of the area. It's an exciting place to be, and it's an exciting university to come and finish out your career and really start your future.
So before we kind of wrap it up, why don't we kind of bookend our respective careers? Tell me, and I got a chance, one of the privileges for me was to be at your retirement ceremony, which was absolutely special, and I appreciate you including Lynn and I in that. Talk about the emotions at the end of a career when you look back and you're thinking about the 39 years you spent. Talk to me with that. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like.
So I've been privileged to mentor a fair number of folks in my career, and I always tell people, I said, what's the purpose of your life? What do you want said about you when you're done? What do you want to be able to accomplish? And that's what I thought about, because when I got into the military, it was pretty straightforward. I went there to go to medical school. I went into medicine. I stayed, and kind of one thing led to another, and ended up. But then as I thought about, okay, what about chapter 2? what happens afterwards? And how do I maintain contact with this organization I love and all these people? But at the same time, what do I want to do in the future? And I gave that a lot of thought about what's the purpose of your life. And for me, the purpose of life is to help people and to prepare those that will one day take my place and follow me. And so the opportunity that you and I discussed about coming to Cleveland State and the students that are here at Cleveland State, and it just presented an amazing opportunity for me to come and give back to my hometown, but also to help a lot of students. And that's what attracted me. And so as I retired, I was probably more excited than I was sad because I knew about the opportunities that lay ahead here at Cleveland State.
And that's again, I think, a credit to our training, right? I mean, not to look back and look forward.
Right.
I think the military was really good at that because you were always preparing for that next assignment,
Yeah.
right? Everything you did was always looking forward. I think back to my last couple months. I will share one moment. I enjoyed wearing the uniform, and I knew that when I left, I wasn't going to be able to wear it anymore, except on rare occasions. So I actually thought about it the last few times I wore it and how lucky I was. I don't know if that happened to you, but you know, when I was at your change of command, just the idea that transition, and I didn't really have many suits or ties. You've done a nice job getting yourself a little bit of a wardrobe. But when you wear the same thing every day for a long time, did you think about that a little bit?
I did.
You were leaving?
Yeah, because it was kind of a joke because it was like, okay, I never had to decide what to wear in the morning. Now I do. And,
Right.
and actually, Michelle was very helpful. My wife was very helpful in saying, you don't wear stripes with plaids and here's things and stuff, because I didn't know.
Yeah, we had pretty much a set wardrobe. I mean, it was khakis, whites, blues,
and
right?
blues. That's
Yeah,
it.
That was it.
That was it.
I mean, all we had to do was make sure we had enough socks.
That's
and some
exactly
shoes.
it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Well, Forrest, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
President Sands, thank you.
And I really look forward to spending a good number of years with you building something great at Cleveland State. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you as well.